Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another study of Torah portion. This week we studied the portion of Vayeishev, and we're starting from selections from Likutei Sichos, the second talk. Just an overview. Yaakov moved back to his father's house. He decides that he wants to come down and enjoy life finally after living a life of battles, losses, and challenges. First, he has an arch enemy, his twin brother. Then he has a father-in-law who is trying to hurt him, cheat him, and lie to him. Then his beloved wife that he was cheated on at the night of the wedding, the happiest night of a person. And she dies at a very young age. And then his daughter gets raped on the road. And finally, he's returning back to his father to be with his father. He wants to enjoy life. And his son, it's a couple of years. It takes about 9 years, I believe, so maybe nine years, that he's trying to live a good life. And then Yosef is not getting along with the rest of the siblings. They are jealous of him. However, he loves Yosef more than all the other children because Yosef resembles, in his looks, resembles his mom, and it's a constant reminder of his mom. Also, he was, Rashi, based on Targum, tells us that Yaakov and Yosef studied Torah. Everything he studied in the yeshiva of Shem and Aver, he taught Yosef. Why didn't he teach the other siblings? Miller says they didn't want to study. So there is different explanations. That's not the time. So God in this week's portion tells you, Yaakov, you're not going to relax. You have to pay back the 22 years that you were not with your parents, serving them with kibud avayim, honoring your father and mother. Even though he went on the command of his mother and father bless him, yet he had to pay back those 20 years, losing a child. This week we read about the dreams that Yosef is having, and not only is insensitive to his brother's jealousy, he adds oil to the flame. He engulfs the flame by telling them about the dream, and he sees that they cannot talk to him because of that. And then he sees another dream, and now he's sharing with them, but it's not enough. He's going to his father too, and his father rebukes him publicly, but the father kept it in the back of his mind, knowing that something is going to happen in relations to the dreams. Mm-hmm. Then, the rest of the story plays out. They caught him away from his father. They sold him as a slave because they wanted to first kill him. And he's end up in jail in Egypt for 9 years, I believe. And the next week, we're going to read 2 years went by 2 years after he explained a dream to the two ministers of Pharaoh, that Pharaoh is having dreams and he's going to interpret them appropriately and becoming the viceroy of Egypt. Meanwhile, his father refuses to get up from his mourning. He continuously mourned after his son without a reason, and he cannot explain how come, but he refuses to go on with his day-to-day life. His life, so to say, came to a halt. God does not appear to Yaakov because he's not happy. A person who is unhappy, God does not speak to. And Yaakov cannot get happy and get away from his mourning because the devastating news that his son is, so to say, murdered or killed by a wild beast is something that he cannot bear. This is this week's Torah portion. There is one concept, the one idea that we're going to be talking about, I believe, and that's about the dreams. The dreams. Harry, you want to say something? Directly related, please.
God said to him or planned that he should not have a happy settlement the rest of his years because there's a midrash that says that, you're going to have to replace the Olam Haba, but here you're going to have to struggle a little bit more. He was a man who suffered most of his life. So God is going to say, I'm going to let you suffer some more. I don't understand that.
So you don't understand how come God tells him you cannot relax. Actually, the Rebbe has a whole talk, number 3. It's a very long, deep one. The one idea I can share with you is that the Rebbe says that he actually reached that point when he went to Egypt. So the blessing was fulfilled even to a greater degree, not only in the Holy Land, he relaxed actually later on. But this is not the topic of our discussion today. For that, you go to the third topic. Yes, Raja?
Why Father rebuke him when he explained the dream to him?
Because he wants to remove the hate and the jealousy from the brothers. They all knew what it means. It means that he is going to be the king.
Okay.
But the father did not want the brothers to hate him even more. So he kind of played it down and says, what are you giving us made up stories? Why are you doing that? This way he's, so to say, siding with the brothers, but he knew full well that there is something much deeper in this.
Because from what I read in Torah, the father actually waited for the dreams.
Right, his father, right.
Expecting.
He knew back in his mind that something is going to happen. Exactly.
I hope I can quote my father in rest.
Page 476. Did Yaakov believe Yosef's dreams? The Torah tells us the following text. He told Yosef the dream to his father and brothers. It's about the sun and moon and 11 stars bowing down to his. He told the dream to his father and brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamt? Will we come, I, your mother, and your brothers, to prostrate themselves to the ground before you?" This is the rebuke Yaakov tells Yosef. You want to tell me that we're going to prostrate before you? Rashi cites the words, "will we come?" and explains that Yaakov asked Yosef the following, "Isn't your mother Rachel already dead?" However, Yaakov did not know that the matter referred to the Bilhah who had raised Yosef as if she were his mother. What do you mean? He says to him, "Me and your mother and your brothers will bow down to you." Rashi says he said to him, "Your mother is not alive." So what do you mean sun and moon? Sun referring to the father, moon is the mother. Says Rashi, but Yaakov was not understanding that the moon is referring to Bilhah. Bilhah is the maidservant that Yaakov had children with, and Laban gave her as a maidservant to Rachel, and she actually raised Yosef. She adopted Yosef. Adopting a child is akin to being their mother, and therefore, when she bows down, it's the moon.
She was the one invasive.
Huh?
The one invasive?
No.
Right.
Our rabbis, here is the continuation of the Rashi. Our rabbis explained Yaakov's words differently, deriving from here that there is no dream without meaningless components. Yaakov was aware of this concept. However, he intended to remove the matter from the hearts of his sons to prevent envy of Yosef. Therefore, he told him, "Will we come?" He was implying, just as it is impossible for your mother to come, so too is the rest of the dream meaningless. Rashi says our rabbis, he refers to Medrash, tells us that there is no dream without a falsehood, something that's incorrect in the dream. That's when you know it's a true dream, that it's not 100% accurate. Yaakov knew that. The children did not know it. So what does Yaakov do? He tells Yosef, this is a meaningless dream because it's something that's impossible to be fulfilled. Yaakov, however, knew that that might be the part that is false, and therefore it is a true dream. In other words, when Yaakov speaks and uses as a proof that it's a false dream, deep inside, he knew that that's the very reason it's a correct dream. Now, this is a different interpretation than the first one, that the moon refers to Bilhah, and then there is nothing wrong with the dream. That's what the Rebbe is going to go. On one hand, the first part that Rashi is talking about, that the moon refers to Bilhah, and he didn't understand that. He applied that to Rachel, and Rachel is dead. The second part, Rashi is saying, Yaakov knew that there is falsehood, something wrong with the dream, and that was that part. However, the children, the siblings, weren't aware, so he used that to prove them, to tell them it's not a good dream. It's just a meaningless dream. This interpretation of Rashi's words follow the understanding of several super commentaries on Rashi, that explain that Rashi is offering two different interpretations of the verse. Says the Rebbe, just like I just told you, there are two separate opposite interpretations. A, Yaakov did not know that the matter referred to Bilam. This interpretation is based on the understanding that the verse is in Bereshit Rabbah. B, the interpretation of our rabbis that there is no dream without meaningless components, which is based on the words of the Talmud. Says the Rebbe, Bereshit Rabbah, the Medrash, is one commentary that he did not know that the moon refers to Bilhah because she raised him instead of his natural mother. And he used that to prove that Yosef's dreams are false. The second interpretation is he knew that there is something false, and he knew it's for a reason, to show him, to serve as a sign that it is a correct dream, but he used it for the children to diffuse their animosity towards Yosef. On the surface, according to the first interpretation, Yaakov thought the dream was meaningless because it implies that Yosef's mother would also bow down to him. Yaakov erred in this judgment because he did not know that the matter referred to Bilhah. By contrast, according to our rabbi's interpretation, that's the Talmud, Yaakov knew that the dream was true and prophetic in nature. The fact that it included Yosef's mother bowing down did not detract from its prophetic import, even though, according to our rabbi's interpretation, it is impossible to say that the matter referred to Bilhah, because there is no dream without meaningless components, and his mother's bowing is one such component. Rashi concludes his commentary in line with this second interpretation, explaining that Yaakov intended to remove the matter from the hearts of his sons, so they will not envy Yosef. Therefore he said to him, "Will we come?" He was saying, "Joe says it is impossible for your mother to come, to bow, so too is the rest of the dream meaningless." That is, although Yaakov knew that the dream was true and prophetic, because there was an error, there was something incorrect, he made this statement to remove the matter from the hearts of his sons. Did you understand so far? Let's move on.
Rabbi, quick question. Previous paragraph, our rabbis in quotes. Why? Is it because of only the Gedolim of the rabbis?
Right.
Thank you.
Our rabbis is the Talmud. They are our rabbis. Without them, I wouldn't know any part of the Torah. However, this interpretation of Rashi's words, appears forced. For the narrative continues. His father waited the matter, which Rashi interprets to mean he waited and looked forward to the dream's fulfillment. In contrast to Rashi's first explanation, according to this understanding, Scripture explicitly states that Yaakov was certain that Joseph's dream was true and would truly be fulfilled, but he did not know when, and so was awaiting and looking forward to its fulfillment. Did you understand that? According to the first interpretation, he found a fault with the dream, and therefore he says this is false, and therefore the entire dream is meaningless. But Rashi concludes that when the Torah says "V'aviv shamar et hadavar," his father awaited the matter, means that he knew it will fulfill. It's a prophetic dream. He just didn't know when, and he was looking forward to it. So that negates the first interpretation. In other words, I'm going to give you a hint now. The Rebbe is going to combine both interpretations into one. On this basis, it is possible to say that Rashi is not citing two separate interpretations. Rather, his entire statement should be seen as one explanation. This is reflected in the precise wording Rashi uses, "our rabbis," derived from here. Such wording does not imply that he is beginning a new interpretation, rather continuing his previous explanation. Rashi does not write as he does in other instances when he cites two interpretations, an alternative understanding, or our rabbi's our rabbi interpretations or the like. In other words, the fact that he continues our rabbis interpreted, not a second interpretation or there is another explanation, Rashi intended to make both these points as one explanation. Rashi should thus be understood as saying, since Yaakov did not know that the matter referred to Bilhah, yet was certain that Joseph's dream would be fulfilled because it's a prophetic dream. As the narrative continues, his father awaited the matter. Our rabbis derive from here that there is no dream without meaningless components. Says the Rebbe, this I'm continuing. I hope everything is clear here so far.
I can't believe that Yaakov, with all his knowledge, didn't realize that there would be somebody taking the place of Rachel. He says,
He said sun and moon.
right, and he couldn't think that
Super commentators say that he erred in that. That's not the Rebbe.
No.
The Rebbe is
Think about
going
his
to put
relationship.
Rashi's 2 points into one, but these points are in Rashi, as the commentator says that he erred. He erred. The reason he erred is because it didn't enter his mind that Bilhah is the moon, referring to the moon. By the way, did the moon actually bow down to him?
No.
We're not sure. Yes.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yaakov was still in love with Rachel and wouldn't think about anything else.
Right.
Other than Rachel.
Could be his mind is all about Rachel and no one can replace her. It's true. This was Yaakov's conception, that even though the dream as a whole would be fulfilled, this particular point, that Joseph's mother would bow down to him, was one of its meaningless components. In truth, however, this was not a meaningless component, because the matter referred to Bilam. The Rebbe takes it backwards, not the way we are thinking forward. The Rebbe says, was the moon bowing down false? No, it's not false, because it refers to Bilhah. In other words, this part is a correct, appropriate part. It's authentic. It will be fulfilled. So Yaakov realized, not Yaakov realized, says Rashi, when he rebukes him about his mother. His mother cannot bow down to you, so the dream is meaningless. But the truth is the mother is going to bow down to him because it refers to Bilhah. So that part was fulfilled. But our sages derive from here that there is no dream without falsehood part. But that's not that part. There is something else, as the Rebbe will find out. Therefore, according to Rashi, according to the way the Rebbe explained, it's all the same explanation, as we'll see down.
When Yaakov went down to Egypt, was Bilhah still alive and with him?
Yeah, why not?
Oh, I'm
Sure,
asking.
sure.
part of the 70.
There is a place where Bilhah is buried, by the way. I think it's in Lebanon. Huh? I think it's in Lebanon. I can tell you in a
Couldn't say
moment.
Egypt with them because it says 70 souls, 69 of them was being born as they were brought in. Bill was still his wife.
Yeah, but 70, the 69 were brought in, but one was born there.
As they were coming, but I'm saying part of 69 was Bill.
Okay, they say in Tiberias. Some say in the note of Tiberias, some say she died the same day of Dinah died, and they're buried right next to Rachel. Okay?
It's not Tiberias.
It's not Tiberias. By the way, the Nachmanides, Ramban, anybody knows about the dispute about where he's buried? No? So I was in Hebron this summer, and he says to me, no, Nachmanides was born in Spain, and he faced a lot of the Christians' leadership. They forced him to major debates. He won the debates, so they were so jealous, they chased him and they were about to kill him. So he had to run away, he ran to Israel. And he died in Israel. Where is he buried? In Hebron, next to the cave of Machpelah, there is a place, and there is candles there, and there is a stone, and they say that's where he's buried. Another place is in the north, in Tiberias. So, two differences of opinions over the years. It's forgotten. They don't know. He died about 800 years ago. Actually, David Wilder is the spokesman for Hebron. His mother and father, his father's yahrzeit is tomorrow. David Wilder, when I came in the summer with Ari for his bar mitzvah, he met us and he spent time with us. I asked him about this, and he says, no, I don't think he's buried. There is no archaeological artifacts to prove that there is a burial site there. There is someone who's buried. So it was probably a memorial for him or something that was erected, and then over the years they called it very Yosef. Let's move on. I do feel that there is a lot to study here. Where am I?
Rashi then concludes explaining that although
Rashi then concludes explaining that although Yaakov knew that the dream would be fulfilled as a whole, in other words, it's a prophetic dream, he still said, will we come to remove the matter from the hearts of his sons? They did not know that there is no dream without meaningless components, and therefore it was possible to tell them, just as it is impossible for your mother to come and bow down to you, so too is the rest of the dream meaningless. In this way, the brothers will not envy Yosef. Says the Rebbe, Rashi ends up with the following. Yaakov tells the brothers and Yosef, what are you talking about? It's a meaningless dream because your mother is not going to come here. Yaakov knew full well that there is a component in the dream that's false, and perhaps that's the false part. And therefore, he knew that it's prophetic, but he used that to diffuse the hate by telling the brothers it will never be fulfilled. If in truth the matter referred to Bilhah, additional clarification is necessary. What are the meaningless components of Yosef's dream? Says the Rebbe, okay, so from here we learn that there is no dream without a false component. But we refer to Bilhah. If we refer to Bilhah, there is nothing false. The question can be resolved by prefacing the explanation of another puzzling dimension of the overall narrative. In other words, the Rebbe says, let's look in the whole story. Similarly, Rashi's interpretation of the verse, his father awaited the matter, that Yaakov awaited and looked forward to its fulfillment, implies that this is something he cherished, desired, and looked forward to happening as soon as possible. What would a father desire in that his son would reign, and he would bow down on the ground in front of him? The Rebbe says, let's talk about another part. It says, "V'aviv shamar et hadavar," his father awaited for the matter to be fulfilled. Rashi says he was watching, waiting for the date to come when it will happen. In other words, you're looking forward to it. What are you looking forward? He's telling you you're going to bow down to him. How can you look forward to it that he's the king? You have one king, right? Who is the king? Yaakov. You can't have a son reign and you are bowing down to him. There are no two kings under the same country. True, the adage, a man will be jealous of anyone except his son and his student, is easily understandable. In other words, a man does not get jealous of his students when they achieve greatly and they even exceed their teacher. Same is about a father with their children when they exceed the father or mother's achievements, they never get jealous. Why? Because that's the way God created us. Nachas. However, this merely teaches that a person will not become jealous when his son or his student attains a greater degree of prominence than he. However, it is not logical to assume that a father would anticipate his son ruling over him, and in addition to his son's elder brothers, in a manner that they would all be the son's servants and bow down on the ground before him. It doesn't make sense that he's looking forward to a point, not only that he will reign and be the king, but they will be subjects, that his older brothers will bow down to him, and he will bow down to him and nullify. It doesn't make sense. There are commentaries who explain Rashi's intent based on the statement of the Medrash that Yaakov, our patriarch, thought that the resurrection of the dead would take place in his time. That is, Yaakov was waiting and looking forward to the dream's fulfillment, not because through it Yosef would reign and all would bow down to him, for in truth that would bring Yaakov much discomfort, but because he thought that the resurrection of the dead would take place in his time. Accordingly, he was looking forward to the time when Rachel, Yosef's mother, would be resurrected. The commentators, that's a more Kabbalistic interpretation. Yaakov looked forward to it. You know why? Because his dream is about someone who is dead to come down in this physical world. All Yaakov says, that's the time when Mashiach will arrive and the resurrection of the dead. And therefore, he's looking forward to it. He wasn't looking forward to bow down to him. He was looking forward to the time that Yosef will be the Mashiach and God will resurrect everybody, and Rachel will come back. That's the life of his life. He actually ended up serving his mother and father-in-law how many years for Rachel? 14 years, because 7 for Leah was a mistake, and she died at a young age, and therefore he was looking forward to it. Says the Rebbe, firstly, it is very difficult to explain Rashi's words in this manner, for they do not contain any hint to the concept stated in the Midrash, that Yaakov thought the resurrection of the dead would take place in his time. First, he says, the Rebbe, it's a good explanation why he looks forward, but don't put it in Rashi's words. There is not a single hint, let alone a word, about resurrection of the dead. Furthermore, the straightforward meaning of his father awaited the matter is that he was looking forward to the fulfillment of the general theme of the dream, and not for an incidental matter that would occur with the dream's fulfillment. In other words, he was looking forward for the dream to be fulfilled, that he is bowing down to him, not about his mother coming back alive. In particular, this is true since, according to this understanding, the general import of Yosef's dream did not contain anything special that Yaakov would anticipate. He would only be looking forward to an incidental element of the dream. It doesn't make sense that the whole reason Yaakov is looking forward to it is because of the resurrection of the dead, which is totally not mentioned. Furthermore, based on the explanation given above, Rashi's intent is the direct opposite. Yaakov thought this element of the dream, that Yosef's mother would bow down to him, was one of its meaningless components. And based on the above, the question remains, what is the great import of this dream that Yaakov was anticipating? In other words, says Rabbi, if he was looking forward for Rachel to come back and bow down, meaning the resurrection of the dead, he used the same reason to diffuse that dream by saying to the children, your mother is not around. But if that's what the meaning, quite the opposite. He cannot say that because he knew that the resurrection of the dead will bring his mother. Therefore, says the Rebbe, on the simple text, you cannot accept that explanation, and you cannot put it in Rashi's words because there is no hint to it, and it doesn't make sense in a simple text. It is possible to say that a resolution can be reached through an analysis of the wording. Our rabbis who derive from here that there is no dream without meaningless components. Seemingly, based on the above explanation, there is only one element of the dream that was not true, that Yosef's mother would bow down to him. If so, the rabbis should have spoken in the singular. There is no dream without a meaningless component. But the way the rabbi says is components, is plural. It appears that they were precise in using the plural components. Says the Rebbe, let's look back at the story. Our rabbis tell us there is no meaningful prophetic dream without meaningless components. Why components? Plural, it's only one. The moon bound out. Yaakov thought there were several meaningless components in Yosef's dream. He thought that just as the component that Yosef's mother would not bow down to him, that who bowed down to him was meaningless, because Yaakov did not know that the matter referred to Bilhah, so too he thought the prophecy that he would bow down to him, to the ground before Yosef, was meaningless also. The true meaning of the dream was only that Yosef would ascend to a lofty position to the extent that he would rule over all his brothers, but not that he would also rule over his father, who would prostrate himself on the ground before Yosef. Did you understand that? Says the Rebbe, Yaakov knew there is no dream without meaningless components, few. What are the meaningless components? A, the moon. The moon is not here because he didn't know it refers to Bilhah. B, him, the sun. He figured there is a meaningless part, which is the moon bowing down to Yosef. Also, the sun bowing down to Yosef is meaningless. And therefore, he will not bow. All the other parts that the brothers will prostrate is correct. Why? Because Yosef will be the leader. But it doesn't mean that he will bow down. Therefore, he was looking forward to it because he realized it's a prophetic dream where Yosef will become the leader. It is possible to say that this was indeed what happened, that Yaakov's bowing down to Yosef was one of the meaningless components of the dream. For Yaakov did not prostrate himself on the ground before Yosef. All that happened was Israel bowed down at the head of the bed, Actually, who bowed down to Joseph? The brothers.
Yeah.
They come to Egypt, they bow down. And then they come back again and they bow down twice because there were two dreams.
Yeah.
The son, Yaakov, never bowed down. The only time is on his deathbed before he dies, he wanted to show respect to the king. So he stood up before the head of the bed because Shechina, divinity, is on top of a sick person. But he never prostrated before Yosef. So therefore, there was meaningless components. There are two components that were meaningless. Number one, the moon. Number two, the sun. On this basis, it is also possible to explain the precision of the wording Rashi uses. Just as it is impossible for your mother to come, so too is the rest of the dream meaningless. He did not say the dream is entirely meaningless. The words Yaakov spoke, although chosen to remove the matter from the hearts of his sons, also allude to Yaakov's true conception of the dream. That is, Yaakov thought that although the fundamental message of the dream would come true, in other words, Joseph will become the king of Egypt, it contained several, not one, several points that would not necessarily come true. Indeed, because there is no dream without meaningless components. It was necessary that it contained several such components. Therefore, Yaakov used wording that would not include any falsehood. It is obvious that although Yaakov desired to remove the matter from the hearts of his sons, he would not make false statements for that purpose. Therefore, he just use the language without lying to them. Let me finish. Thus, by saying, so too is the rest of the dream meaningless, Yaakov was telling the truth. He meant that the dream contained other meaningless components in addition to the particular point that Joseph's mother would come. Nevertheless, his sons were led to understand from his words that the dream was entirely meaningless. In other words, Yaakov did not diffuse the entire dream saying it's all false. He just said to him, there is many components that make no sense. You think that I'll come to bow down to you? He felt that just like the mother cannot come to bow, he also will not come down. But he used the very carefully wording without diffusing the entire dream, just saying there are parts of it that makes no sense. They took it in the other direction. They understood that the entire dream is incorrect, the brothers, and therefore it was to diffuse their hatred. What?
He says, but the rest of the dream. He says that the rest of the dream is meaningless. I'm not sure that's how couple of us are doing it.
Where does it say the rest of the dream?
The same paragraph.
The last one?
That's by saying so too is the rest of the dream meaningless. Yaakov was telling the truth, but the rest of the dream wasn't meaningless.
The rest is not the entire dream. In Hebrew, it's the word is ash'ar, the rest. But it's not all of it. In other words, he said to him, just like your mother cannot come to bow, there are other components that are incorrect. He says other components are false. They took it as it's an entirety. He did not lie because he meant another part. Huh?
I'm trying to imagine that all this went carried on in the presence of everybody. Because if he's telling them he dreamt once and twice, the father must have been there. Then he comes to Yaakov and said, look what this dreamer did. He rebuked him in front of everyone. So all this stuff took place at the same time with everybody.
Right.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine it.
Let's continue. The Rabbi is going to go even one step further. Further explanation is nevertheless necessary regarding the fundamental message of the dream, that Joseph would rule over his brothers and they would come to prostrate themselves on the ground before him. When considering the inner dimension of the matter, true, Joseph was born to Yaakov in his old age, and he loved him more than all his sons, and therefore it was natural for Yaakov to desire that Joseph rise to prominence and even exceed all his other sons. Nevertheless, why was it important that Joseph rule over his brothers to the extent that they would prostrate themselves on the ground before him? And why was it this so significant that Yaakov awaited and looked forward for it to happen. In other words, the Rebbe is asking, but the bottom line is, even though Yosef was exceeded in learning and his closeness to Yaakov, as we know, he spoiled them, but yet, why is it to such an extent that he was excited about everybody prostrating before Yosef? The second question is, why was he looking forward to it? What do you mean looking forward? So he figured it's false that I'll bow down. It's false that your mothers bow down. But the fact that the brothers will bow down, will prostrate, is correct. Why was he looking forward to it? It is possible to resolve these questions based on the latter statement made by Rashi in the verse, he sent them from the valley of Hebron, that Yaakov sent Yosef because of the deep counsel of the righteous man who is buried in Hebron, that is Abraham, to fulfill what was said to Abraham in the covenant Brit Ben Abtarim, your descendants will be strangers. According to this understanding, it is possible to say that the totality of the story that transpired between Yosef and his brothers related to in this Torah reading was part of the deep counsel that would lead to the fulfillment of the prophecy of the covenant Ben Absarim. This, in other words, Abraham was told that his grandchildren are going to go to Egypt. Yaakov knew that one day they're going to be expelled from the Holy Land and going to be slaved. He felt that perhaps Yosef is part of the direct part of it. This understanding sheds light on Rashi's intent in the commentary under discussion. What was Yaakov waiting for and anticipating? From an inner perspective, he did not see Yosef's reign and his brother's prostration before him as a goal in and of itself, rather as a means to an end, that through Yosef's reign, the prophecies of the covenant Ben Absarim will be fulfilled. Perhaps the reason he was looking forward for it, because he knew now is the time the prophecy that his grandfather received from God is playing out now. To explain, there were many possible ways in which the decree, your descendants will be strangers in the land that is not theirs, could have been fulfilled. As our sages commented, it would have been fitting for Yaakov, our patriarch, to descend to Egypt in iron chains. Therefore, when Yaakov heard Yosef's dream, he awaited and looked forward to its fulfillment so that Yosef would reign, and in this manner, Yaakov would descend to Egypt in a dignified manner. That's what happened. Moreover, as a result of Yosef becoming the advisory, that aside from him, no one could lift his hand or his foot in the land of Egypt. For many years, the Jews sojourn in the land of Egypt would be characterized by peace, honor, and tranquility. For many, many years, I believe perhaps hundreds of years. Indeed, this became the reality. The Jews dwelled in the land of Goshen, which was the choicest portion of the land. So that's how I was looking forward. He knew that he's going to be the one and his children to be sent to Egypt, to a foreign land, and become strangers. And when Yosef is dreaming to reign as a king, he figured perhaps he's the one that starts the fulfillment of the dream. And because of Yosef becoming the king, they will not be led to Egypt with shackles, with chains, but actually as dignified family of the royal family, which actually that's what happened. This interpretation as well is nevertheless problematic, because a simple meaning of Yosef's dream did not concern the general concept that he would become a world ruler, only that the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowing down to me. That is, that Yaakov and Yosef's brother would bow. Says the Rebbe, yeah, it's a good explanation, but it's not a simple explanation, because his dream is not about being the king and everybody is coming down to Egypt. His dream is just about the family bowing down. Also, according to this understanding, it is not appropriate to say that Yaakov awaited and looked forward to its fulfillment. This expression implies that he was looking forward to the dream's speedy fulfillment in the near future. However, according to the above interpretation, Yaakov certainly would not look forward to the dream being fulfilled speedily. Why would he anticipate the beginning of the exile, even if it would begin with honor? Thus, it would have been appropriate for Rashi to merely say that Yaakov understood that the dream and its message would be fulfilled not that he waited and looked forward to its fulfillment. Rabbi says, I don't understand. We're talking about exile, slavery. You can call it looking forward to it. Looking forward to it meaning that you waited for it to happen a day sooner. And it's not true. Nobody is looking forward to it. Even if the meaning is that he's going to be part of a royal family and he's coming down to dignity, but you don't look forward to it. You are aware of that. Okay, that's great. So you know now he's not going to be sent as a slave to Egypt. But it's not something you're looking forward to. To explain the above, as is well known, at times the entire Jewish people are referred to as Yosef. As in the verse, he led Yosef like sheep. The inner reason for this is not only that in a simple sense Yosef supported and sustained them in the days of famine, but that he conveyed and transmitted his spiritual qualities to every Jew. The rabbi is going to go and say that the idea of Yosef was different than, I'm going to give you a summary. Yosef is different than the rest of his brother in what way? They were shepherds, and he was a man busy with worldly matters. What do you mean shepherds? Why were they shepherds? According to Medrash, no ruler of the Jewish people became a ruler before they became shepherds. Why? Because a shepherd is away from the temptation of day-to-day life. You don't have an opportunity to cheat in business because you don't deal with cash, or you don't sell by the weight or measure. You don't have issues with the gender issues and intimacy because you're far away from other people. You live with animals, and you have an opportunity to be kind to the animals. As David was dividing his herds into 3 separate groups, the young one, the older one, and then the middle age would come out to eat the roots and those who had strong teeth. Moshe was a shepherd. Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were shepherds. David was a shepherd. Every time, as the Torah as the Psalm tells us about Yaakov, that God took him from the farm. And the same is the children of Yaakov. What were they doing in Dotan or in Shechem? They were shepherding the sheep. Yosef wasn't a shepherd. You know why? His soul was about to engage with the day-to-day life activity and overcome and conquer it. That's why when Yosef is born, Yaakov wants to live. Because now he has someone with a soul that can fight anybody, including Esau. And that's the uniqueness of Yosef. That's why he was not a shepherd. And that's why, as we know, he was tempted with the worst temptation, with the ultimate temptation, and he overcame it.
Was he a shepherd to begin with?
No, never was a shepherd. Never. Therefore, living in a foreign land as a foreign resident, he did not learn from their waywards, and he always continuously stayed steadfast, followed his father and grandfather's pathway. That's what Yaakov is looking forward to. There will be a time right now he realized that there is a shift. In order for the covenant to be fulfilled, to go to exile, part of it is to shape up the Jewish people and to make them engage in the universe and face temptation and face day-to-day life hardship where you have a temptation to cheat, to take a shortcut, to misbehave. And yet you stay away because you are God's children, because you are assigned a different task in life. The only one who can do it is not Yaakov, it's Yosef. And therefore, we understand why he's looking forward to it. Because the children will need to bow down to him in a spiritual, this is the Kabbalistic interpretation, they actually physically prostrated before him. But there is a spiritual component that they will realize that they have to change and learn from his conduct, from his soul, infusing them with the ability to overcome all challenges. That's why Yaakov is looking forward to it. That moment where they take a turn to the right. They take a turn to engage with the universe. And therefore, the entire purpose of the living in Egypt for many, many years, many decades, was for a purpose, for that purpose. That's why the Jewish people are called Yosef, not just Yehuda, not just Yaakov. Only after Yosef had done his job, it will shift back to Yehuda. But the start has to come from Yosef. This one, I think that the In other words, that infusion gave them for future generations. They will be expelled from the Holy Land 2 times later on. The Babylonians and the Romans will expel them, and they will survive. You know why they will survive? Because Joseph infused the Jewish people in Egypt with the ability to engage in day-to-day commerce, to engage with temptation and overcome. So the later generations, 10, 20 generations later, when Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king, will explain them to Persia, and they will have to live with a time like Daniel, Mishael, and Hananiah, where they have to face idol worship, and while they are advisors to the king and they live in the palace, they will be able to overcome. That cannot happen to Jacob, who was a shepherd. That cannot happen to the children. They need to have Yosef. That's why the Jewish people are also called Noeg Katzon Yosef. Yosef is shepherding the Jewish people, although he was never a shepherd, shepherding the Jewish people. Yes.
All the Jews in the world were the ones who went into Egypt, right? There were no other Jews in the world at the time?
Yeah.
Right, so what happened to them?
Wow.
When Yaakov and his children went to Egypt,
Yeah.
supposedly those were the only Jews in the world.
Right.
What happened to all the converts that Avraham made?
They're all gone.
Gone?
The next generation, yeah.
In other words, they all died off except for Yaakov.
Yeah, there was no continuation to them. Why? Did you never heard that?
Well, I was under the impression there was still Jews floating around somewhere out there.
Well, yeah, because
We didn't make it to Egypt.
Yaakov, Abraham, hundreds of people converted, and
Thousands,
thousands of people.
but they're all gone. As soon as Abraham started traveling in the Holy Land, they said it's not for us.
They went to Miami.
Our people, I miss our people.
It's time, Rabbi.
Says, okay. So I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.